Is he?
Side in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, we have a metal trash can here tonight, too. That's great. Thank you for coming to our public information session. We are going to try and present to you a small summary of some of the materials that we've been reviewing. The bulk, it's a voluminous amount of data, so we don't want to bore you with that, but we do want to hear from you. But before we do that, we just wanted to explain a little bit about our mission, what we've been doing, you know, what we're trying to get through the survey data and from this public information session. Okay, and I'm Kathy Castronellis.
Bill O'Neill. Nice to meet you.
Stephanie Bartelt.
Jan Dempsey.
David Greenbaum.
Rebecca Oldham, Town Administrator.
Brian Walsh with the Mass DEP.
Okay. And yes, this is a five-member committee, and we have two experts with us. So we can go forwards. Thanks. Okay, so this particular committee was formed, believe it or not, July 2023. And our mission was to research and prepare recommendations to the Select Board for the town's next trash and recycling contract. So we have a membership of 5 members, one from the Select Board, which is myself, one from the Finance Board, which is Bill, one from the Board of Health, right down here, and 2 citizens at large. Hello, thank you. And you have our names already, so we've been through all that. We can go forward. Yes, thank you. Okay, and we have our technical advisors, Rebecca Oldham and Brian Walsh. Both of them have a lot of expertise. And Arthur is not with us here tonight, but he has also been an expert on the trash industry and giving us information from his knowledge base as well. We also want to thank Jim Stepanian because he did serve on the board for a while prior to the chair of the Board of Health stepping in. But he helped us out there in the beginning, and we want to thank him. So how do we go about doing this directive? How do we go about doing the research? Well, we started to meet. We met once per month. We compiled a database. Well, we didn't. Mainly our town administrator did that, although members of the committee, I think, also uploaded documents as well. So we now have an enormous database of contracts from other towns, of research from other towns, of surveys done at the state level, of, I'm trying to reach you now, things from the hauling industry are in this database. I'm trying to keep going. Can you think of anything else I might have missed that's in the database? It's a lot of information. We have a lot of information. We also had experts come in. Brian, of course, has been with us for a little while now, which is fantastic, but we had other experts come in and talk to us about pay-as-you-throw programs. How does it work? How do some towns do it? How do other towns do it? There's all different types of models, and there's no one-size-fits-all for this kind of thing. So it's sort of like you have to think about what would work best. What do people want? What's going to work? For example, Boxford, in their first attempt, tried some kind of a sticker program, I believe. I read their report, and that didn't work for their residents. The residents didn't like the stickers. I think the stickers fell off. Maybe the trash didn't get picked up if your sticker fell off. I don't know, but they were very opposed to doing a sticker program again. So then they just went to one 64-gallon trash cart and an annual fee of $175 per year. And that's what they're rolling with right now. And they seem to be happy with that. There's a lot of different models out there. After listening to all these different experts, we realized that there's so much out there that's not really going to help us anymore to know more. We have to figure out, what do the people of Groveland want? What can we do to improve this service, make it a better service, and bring it in at a point where it's not going to disrupt our very delicately balanced budget. Our town budget is balanced within like $50 most years. It's that tight. It says we created a brochure, but I think we have two people to my right here created it. Am I right? It was you and Jan? Yeah, they did that. And some additional copies are available back there. We also did the survey. We sent that out, and the data came back, and Stephanie's going to talk a little bit about that data. It was an okay survey. We kind of regret that we didn't give like check boxes on some questions because some of the information came back with people typing in words instead of giving us numbers. And in the audience here tonight, Becky from the Select Board was very kind to go through and try and clean it up so that we could make some kind of representation of responses from that survey. And in addition to totaling up the different responses from the survey, I also went back and captured all of the comments, because we asked at the end, do you have anything else that you want us to know? And I did go through and take those all out and put them into a separate document for the committee to review as we go forward, because we are interested in what people have questions about or what people are concerned about. We are interested in that. And myself, I read all 233 comments that were made because I want to know what is it that people think is going on. I think some people think that it's happening right now. It's not. We're still over a year out from the next contract. So we're just being very, very proactive to make sure that we can get the best possible contract for the town. And the goal of this session here, of course, is to share with you a summary of our findings, talk about different frameworks for the next contract, but we don't have, I want to be very clear about this, we don't have a sample contract. We're not even near that yet. What we have are findings and research that tell us about what's happening with the cost in trash, what's happening in the hauling industry, and then hearing from the people in town, what is it that our residents want most from this service. So this is my introduction, so I think I'm just about done with that. We want to allow a lot of time at the end of our little summary so that you can talk to us and ask us questions or just state concerns. If you think there's something that we haven't heard and we don't know about, that we should know about, please feel free to bring it up. And if you're not comfortable doing it on camera in this, at the end you can always write it down or come up to one of us and share it. That's fine. We're very approachable. Okay? So thank you so much for being here. Do we have any zoomed-in people here or not?
Looks like there's 10.
Okay, good. Where do you see that?
There's 10 people in the
Oh,
comment,
okay.
but one of them, I think, is Rebecca, so 9.
Okay, so 9. So we did have a Zoom link, and so what we're allowing on the Zoom link is that folks there can type into the, where you can ask questions, and we'll keep track of those. And if they have new questions that are not coming up here, then we'll go through their questions as well. So we're trying to reach out to as many people as possible. And I know everybody's busy. It's hard to stop what you're doing and come down and talk about trash. So thank you for making the time. And our next presenter, I think, will be Brian, giving us an overview of what's going on in the state with trash. Thank you.
Both mics on?
You can use that microphone if you like. Yeah. Is it?
I'm a pacer.
Okay. Yep. So if you have to push the button if it's not green yet. Other than that, it's not complicated.
Hi. Okay. Do you mind putting it in slideshow mode, or is that good? Oh, awesome.
Take me a second.
Okay. Well, yep. So, hi, I'm Brian Walsh with I'm the Municipal Assistance Coordinator with the Mass DEP. So I'm grateful to be here tonight. I also want to take a moment to commend the Select Board and the citizens for their engagement in this. A lot of times, trash and recycling, when you don't put a lot of thought into it, towns end up with just like in bad situations, and the decisions you make in trash and recycling are really sticky. They kind of last in the community for a long time. So I think it's awesome how much engagement there is around this. So I kind of want to give a high-level overview of what's going on in Massachusetts, and it really focuses on this idea of, as a state, we have dealing with a situation where our capacity is shrinking and continuing to shrink over the next course of the decade. Our landfills are approaching capacity. Our incinerators are approaching capacity. And so with that, we're having to send more waste out of state to places like New Hampshire, Ohio, Alabama, and the prices within the state are getting higher. So one of the big foundational points I kind of want to make is we're seeing shrinking capacity, and that's leading to way higher disposal costs than we've seen in the past. So it's kind of an overview of the way trash is changing quickly, and it looks very different than it has now in the past. So kind of the theme of this presentation will be what we can do as members of the Commonwealth to kind of address this together, work in waste reduction, find ways to extract as much value as we can out of the materials that we consume through recycling and composting, and hopefully reduce the need for that capacity and reduce the amount that we're shipping out of state. So kind of that all rolls up into kind of this high-level plan that the Commonwealth put together is solid waste master plan, and what I just want to pull out from that is we have a 30% reduction goal from 2020 to 2030 to try to address, as a state, this capacity issue to reduce our solid waste by 30%. So some ways that in that plan we kind of identified different ways to achieve that. It's a really robust plan. There's different things like how do we develop markets for different pieces of recyclables? How do we make more of a robust food waste and organics composting system? It's all about the words like materials management. How do we have an effective and robust materials management system in the state? And kind of what I want to zoom in on today is the residential waste reduction piece. So I think this is a good opportunity to just kind of talk about some tips of waste reduction, and I'm going to zoom more in on that last one for the rest of the presentation. But just being mindful consumers of what we purchase, can I purchase reusable when it's possible, or recyclable or compostable, really kind of bringing in this mindset of when I'm purchasing something, what's the end of the life of this product going to be? And with that, learning about recycling best practices, considering composting. On the statewide level, 20 to 30% of the things that we put in our landfill or incinerate is food waste that could be composted and turned into soil. So it's this idea of extracting the value out of what we're consuming as opposed to just landfilling it or incinerating it. And then repairing items instead of replacing them, donating. And all these things are things that the DEP has different grant funding to support, and included in that is this pay-as-you-throw program that we've kind of been hearing a lot of talk about. So I'll kind of zoom a little more into that. So pay-as-you-throw, so I think at its simplest, I think the way I just like to think of it is like a utility is kind of making trash similar to a utility. For whatever reason, that wasn't the way things were set up back in the day. But we're in a much different landscape, like I said, with this shrinking capacity and rising costs in the state. So just as if my neighbor keeps the house 10 degrees warmer, they take 30-minute showers and I take 2-minute showers, and they have holiday lights all through the year and I don't, more power to them. I don't really want to think our bills should be the same. And it's kind of taking the ethos of that is kind of built into this pay-as-you-throw model, and the idea being that will also encourage waste reduction by making disposal costs tied to the amount that someone's producing in waste. So a kind of high-level view of the state. I know it can be tough to see what's going on in this map, so I'll kind of go through it. Those little hash marks in the municipalities is adopting a pay-as-you-throw program, and then the tonnage, the amount, the color corresponds to what's the pounds per household being generated in those municipalities. So I bring this up for the point of, I think the DEP has done a really good job of not just proposing things willy-nilly because they think it's the right thing to do, but it's been based off data that's been collected for the last 20 years on what actually works in reducing waste so that we can build this effective materials management system and be responsible for our own waste in the Commonwealth. So you can see there's a significant difference between what pay-as-you-throw communities generate versus non-pay-as-you-throw communities, and they often kind of like move in clusters of each other. As when some towns go, it works for them, and then their neighbors start going pay-as-you-throw. So you can see how these lighter colors kind of cluster together across the state. Next one. So kind of like zooming in a little more is one of the differences, the kind of the new trends in pay-as-you-throw is the industry is shifting from manual collection to automated collection. That's being driven by the haulers and the technology they've invested in to keep their workers in the trucks to prevent injuries and lower like workers' comp for them. So the industry is moving towards automated pickup. So for that reason, the DEP's kind of identified what they consider as like the right-sized container for waste reduction, being that 35-gallon cart. And then I think kind of the proposal that's been around Groveland, and I've seen in some other towns, has been this idea of to incorporate pay-as-you-throw into that is, okay, if that 35 is not enough, the ability to lease a second 35-gallon cart, but there's a cost associated with that, again, to make it proportional to what people are generating. So the state provides $30 in funding per household for a program like that. So in Groveland, that'd be a $66,000 grant to purchase carts. The carts usually end up costing around like, I want to say like $46 or something around there, 47. So that $30 goes a long way to purchasing carts. So again, the kind of like the data-driven like nature of what we're talking about. We haven't just been throwing darts at things and being like, that looks good. It's based off the data. So you can see in 2023, this is the pounds per household based off the cart size in communities. So 64-gallon carts generate 1,669 pounds per household. 35-gallon carts generate 1,304 pounds per household. So and then my next slide, that also corresponds to significant municipal like savings and less money being spent on disposal fees in the town. So in 2025, Groveland's going to pay $103 per ton in tipping fees. Tipping fees is what it costs to dump the truck in the landfills or the incinerator. And that, again, shrinking capacity, rising costs, probably going to see that trend increase over the next decade. And so a 20% reduction in tonnage, which is kind of the difference between 64-gallon and 35-gallon that we see the data bear out, would be approximately almost $40,000 annually in disposal cost savings. Some of that might reappear in recycling processing costs. Recycling processing costs, though, are much lower than trash disposal costs, and that trend continues to kind of move in that direction as we build out recycling markets, but we lose capacity for waste disposal. So the idea being here is it's a very good use of municipal funds to think about ways that you can, as a community, organize around waste reduction. Again, with the 35-gallon carts, just kind of want to point out other towns do it. I think that's one of the knee-jerk reactions to 35-gallon carts is, I could never do it, I can't fit in it, which is fair when you've never kind of tried to. I mean, I get that, but I think where we're trying to move as a state is, we'll try, like 35 gallons, the right size container. We're gonna try what about composting? What about repair? What about recycling? Try to incentivize all these different ways for waste reduction to try to fit in that 35-gallon container that's best to meet these goals. And if you can't, then that's when we're having this option of having an additional cart to meet those needs, but then having a cost associated with that. And again, I think it's cool to see, you don't have to go back, Rebecca, but there were very different town types in there, if you will. You have like Brockton's and Malden's contrasted with Swampscott's and Wenham's. So it works in a lot of different communities. So I guess this kind of high-level pillars that I kind of see as like pay-as-you-throw is it being environmentally responsible, fiscally responsible, and a fair program. Again, so I think one of the reasons, like the fairness in the sense of, if I dispose of 2 bags and my neighbor disposes of 6, that's not the same cost isn't associated with that. Rebecca, if you want to click to the next slide. Fiscally responsible and the disposal costs are reduced. You want to click through, Rebecca? Environmentally responsible in the sense that it's a better use of our resources, and there's a lot of emissions data on that. I didn't want to bore you guys with the emissions stuff on this, but you can go to the next one too, Rebecca. I'll wrap up. So again, those are the kind of high-level ideas, why pay-as-you-throw is kind of supported at the state level, among other waste reduction ideas. And then last slide, I want to kind of close with, maybe it won't surprise you that as a trash nerd who just talked about trash for 10 minutes, that I have a favorite quote from the master plan, but it's the building blocks for a zero-waste future are in our hands today. And I think the reason that that's resonated with me is, so I've lived in Massachusetts my whole life. My parents are from Massachusetts. My grandparents are from Massachusetts. I love the state. And I know that like the decisions that my grandparents made and my parents made and the way they voted in different meetings and whatnot kind of laid the foundation for the things I love about this state. And I think sometimes in this like waste reduction, sustainability conversation, sometimes the path of least resistance isn't necessarily going to lay the best foundation for the future generations. So when I think about like my future children and grandchildren and leaving them with a like sustainable Massachusetts, I try to think about, okay, what are the things I can do today to kind of lay those as a state can we do to like lay the building blocks so they can thrive. And that's all I got.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so is it me next? We're going to go through all of them first. Yeah, we're just going to get, because I want to be able to open it up for questions at the end.
Thank you.
Oh, you're next. You go. Rebecca's next.
You're done.
Do you have slides?
No, I
So-
have another segment.
I'm Rebecca Oldham. I'm the town administrator. Thank you for the Trash and Recycling Committee for their work in allowing me to be here. The only thing I was on the schedule to talk about is that I have been participating in the Northeast haulers and contracting working groups with all of the surrounding areas. So what we've been trying to do for our due diligence is confirm with other communities what actions they're taking. And one of the things that we're learning is that every community is a little different and one size doesn't fit all. So learning a little bit more about the pathway that Boxford took or the pathway that Topsfield is taking, or that there are different market values for different commodities for recycling and how that gets transferred to the communities, and whether or not you have a recycling plant or if your hauler's using a recycling plant. So there's a lot of different aspects that go into taking a closer look at the programming. And one of the tasks that the Trash and Recycling Committee has been charged with is kind of getting more information about all those different aspects and trying to propose a program for the town that we can then take and put out to the haulers in the surrounding area and see if they would be willing to bid on our contract for the next fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 27. So our contract is still valid until July 1st of 2026. So we're just doing a lot of our due diligence and our homework right now, but we are participating, we are talking to our neighbors, we are talking to the state, we are looking into as many resources as we possibly can in order to get as much information as we possibly can so that we can make sure that we're getting the best program that we possibly can.
Right, thank you. Who's next? Is it me?
I'm not sure. Who's next on the agenda?
Does she have the Zoom? I should open up my iPad, right? Yes. Who's next on the slides with that?
You.
Okay, I thought so. Great, thanks. Okay, so we're going to go as quick as we can because we want to let people ask questions. I know that's probably why you're here. I'm Kathy Kesternellis. I'm the select board member on this committee. And I have just a couple. Could you show the one that has the bars first? So it has a table at the top with the blue bars. Yay. Okay, thank you. So this is the contract that we have right now. And let me be clear, this is not the whole contract. When you look at those two little columns and say, well, that's all they pay. No, no, no. There's so many other hidden fees and little things that go on within these contracts. These contracts are highly complex. on the trash and the recycling side. And the recycling side in particular is market-driven. So they do like a condensed market cost of what recycling is getting, and then they offset against that the processing fee that they charge us to process it. So that amount of money that we pay for recycling can go up and down depending on what's going on in the recycling market. The tonnage cost is set in the contract, but I believe there's also a provision if the labor costs go up significantly, they can come back for more on that. But you can see, even without them coming back, that we started out at $81 and we're going up to $103. And I think I'm good with numbers and not names, so I think I'm right to say that back in like 2014, we were probably more down at like $50 or $60 a ton. We saw an incredible surge in the cost per ton following the pandemic, but also I think following, I don't know how many of you remember when China decided not to take our recycling any longer, everything is becoming more costly. There's nowhere to put it. Nobody wants it in their backyard. If you've lived in town long enough, you'll know that we got assessed. I think it was almost $600,000 for the landfill in Haverhill because some of our trash went there over the years, and then they found something toxic in it, and they decided that everybody who had had trash brought there had to pay part of the settlement on it. So, these trash contracts have to also protect the town, and that's why, we have Rebecca and Arthur involved and Brian, because we want to make sure that we're protected, that whatever is taken out of our town is taken to the appropriate places. So I know there's been a lot of comments in the survey that, why don't you go out to bid? Yeah, that's going to happen, okay? But we're not going to necessarily go out to bid and take the lowest bidder. I'll be honest, because in looking at the research we've looked at, and especially in listening to our town administrator and Arthur and other experts in the industry, to go out for information or proposals is better because that allows us to sift through the proposal and see what we like and don't like in that proposal. Because there could be things other than just the cost per ton that we don't want or like. And we also want to put in the security that we don't have right now so that if something goes wrong and the trash is not removed from the town, there's some kind of monetary fee to us so that we can hire someone to come in and get that trash, because we don't have that right now in our current contract. Our current contract, in the day that it was negotiated, and it was brought forward by our interim finance director, who rightfully said that this is a pretty good price because the tipping fee is lower, that's the tonnage fee, than the other towns because they have their own facility. And we are still a little bit lower in tonnage cost than other towns around us, even ones that have negotiated recently. But where we're not lower is in the curbside pickup cost, right? And that's reflective of the fact that the person on that truck at any juncture has to get down out of the truck and go get that trash. And it's Waste Management that's driving this move to no longer allow that because their workers get injured. And you can see why. I mean, they have to walk out into traffic and this and that. So there's a need to have the kind of carts that can withstand those trucks and the automation. So that's why you get the standardized cart. We don't want people to go out and find whatever they want or color they want. We want to purchase the cart standardized and structured for this kind of a pickup. That's important. And I don't know how many of you are around when we did have, unfortunately, a trash removal worker was injured, was lost his life on the job here in Groveland about, 25 years ago, was it? It's a while ago. But it's unfortunate because that's the danger of that because, you're getting off a truck and there's traffic and it's a big trash truck and it's, I can see why the hauling companies are saying, we're not going to bid on those towns anymore because we don't want to have to pay for the liability insurance for our workers. Just lifting the bins, they don't know what's in it. They don't know how heavy it is, and there's just too much cost involved for the haulers to be able to do that anymore. And that's why you see all around us the automated bins popping up. And we're not going to charge people in town for these bins. We're going to look for grants. We're going to use maybe some of the stabilization, and then we should see a reduction in that cost. And if we could go to the last slide, I'll finish up and let the next one person speak so we can get to the question and answer time. No, the circle one. I call them bar chart and circle ones. Okay, so this is something that I took on, having been on the finance board for a long time, on and off the times I've lived in town, because I'm a numbers person, so I was drawn to the finance board first. I know how tight the budget is in this town. We balance within, $50 some years on Prop 2.5. And what I did is I took the budget from 2014, fiscal 2014, and I took the amount of money that is sort of discretionary, meaning that it doesn't mean we don't need it, but it's money that we have control over. So the funding for our public safety department, the funding for our council on aging, the funding for our library, the funding for our general government in the town hall, okay? Not the schools, because 2 towns can vote the budget. 2/3 majority can vote our regional school budget. So we don't have absolute control over those. We don't have control over insurance. We don't have a control over the entire retirement assessment. Those are fixed. So I deducted those out. And we don't, street lighting. So then what I did was compared the cost of the trash. I think if you can go up a little bit higher on that slide, we're going to lose it. Can you shrink? You can't shrink it a little bit? That's all right. Oh, that's beautiful. Perfect. No, that's too small. Yep. Oh, that's great. We'll go with that. So what, thank you so much. What I was trying to just show is that, I suppose I have to carry this over. I'm a walker. That back in 2014, and even before that, trash was not a huge impact on our town operating budget. It was 11%, probably less, when we first took on trash in our town budget. But now, as of fiscal '24, it's up at 19%. So these increases in the trash budget are going to cost us in our town services. And just to give you like an overview, that our fire department, I remember the fire chief last time I spoke with him said, we used to have, when my husband was a volunteer on the department, we got up to 500 calls, and everybody thought that was a lot. Well, they're up at like 900 calls a year now. And we have 2 full-time firefighters and 1 fire chief during the day. And then at night, it's all volunteer. And I can tell you from having lived with a volunteer firefighter, when you start getting multiple calls at night, it's difficult. We're asking a lot of our volunteers here. We're asking maybe more than we should, okay? And we can't afford to give 25, 30, or 40, 25% of our operating budget to trash. Same reason I would say to the school budget when they wanted more than we can give. I don't think our services can endure any reductions. We have bare minimums in most departments. In the town hall here, we have 1-person offices. If they're out sick for any reason, everybody else scrambles to try to cover for them. We don't have a lot of backup people on the job. I think our highway department, are we at 4 people now? Is it 4? It's very small. They take care of everything. The repairs, the plow, everything. So we are kind of a lean and mean town, and I think we have to pay attention to what's happening here. So the bottom line is, from a budgeting standpoint, from a financial standpoint, can we budget for the curbside pickup? Yes, if we can get to the automated cost, which will reduce it a little bit. The tonnage and the recycling, those are really difficult to budget for. The tonnage, we might have a price in our contract, but we have no control over how much tonnage is picked up. So what that means, if you're trying to budget for tonnage, is that you're going to have to over budget, because you can't overspend a budget, right? Or if you do, we're going to have to transfer and take it away from somebody else's budget, and they don't have extra money. So the whole point in going to somewhat of a pay-as-you-throw, we're trying to look for like a smooth transition, not something that will shock, no shock and awe. We don't want people to have no way to throw out their trash. But we do need to have a revenue stream outside the tax rate to guarantee our trash curbside collection program can be successful. We're going to have to move towards that. And that's what we're looking at. That's what we're researching. And again, we want to make this a good thing and not a bad thing. So some of the good things that you might want to think about is that if we go automated, perhaps we could have fewer collection days, because I know people who have the Friday collection day don't like it. Because when things go wrong in the week, they're the ones that it gets dumped on. So they don't like being on the Friday collection. Okay, so that could be a positive thing, right? We might find that with more control of our trash budget, our town budget isn't as tight. And, you know, we've had to go with unfilled positions. We've had to take all the stipends away from all of our volunteer boards. It doesn't feel good to have to tell that to people, that we can't even give them a small stipend for volunteering and serving on a board in our town. Other towns give out a stipend. It'd be nice to be able to put that kind of thing back in. So, will we double tax you if we take the tonnage cost or some portion of it and put it outside the tax rate? Absolutely not. We budget for what we need to have. And so right now, we're budgeting all the way up to the max. And so every year, we're just chiseling away at different department budgets to get a little bit. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a buffer there so that when something does go wrong in a department, we have somewhere to go, right? So that's what this is about. It's not to say that everybody in town hasn't been doing what they should. For the most part, when I go around town, I think people are doing a pretty good job with recycling, and I see most of the containers fit within what we want. People come to town meeting, and they're very respectful and responsible, and they ask good questions. So keep doing everything you've been doing, and we will make it through this transition by next contract year. But I'm going to stop now, so let our next two people speak. Thank you. Who's next?
I don't know.
We should have sat in order.
Can I just, I'm just going to sit here because I don't have a lot to say.
Go ahead.
I think it's the pie charts.
The pie
I
chart.
guess so.
The survey.
Good to see you.
Here we go.
All right, so I'm Stephanie Bartelt. I'm one of the citizen members of the committee, and I just took some of Becky Boucher's distilled data points and turned them into a couple of pie charts. I don't really have a lot to say because I think the colors kind of speak for themselves. So we had 732 total responses, which is pretty good, not including probably a handful of some duplicate responses. But that's probably a third of our households in town. And so the three questions that I chose to turn into a pie chart were the trash cart size, because I thought that was interesting. So if you look at that, it says that most people say that they are using currently a 64-gallon trash cart. And then second is a 35-gallon. But I think a fair number of people in town probably don't really know, because I think mine's a 35. It's not very big, but maybe don't really know how big their cart is. And some people do say that they are using, the yellow is the 96 gallons. So there's a few people that are using a larger trash cart. And then there were, like I say, a variety of responses that varied. And then the next slide showed, yeah, so the recycling cart size, a lot of people use those, the small boxes that we got, totes, yeah, that we got in various towns around the Commonwealth. We're still using those. But a fair number of people are also using a larger container, which is good. That means a lot of us are putting some effort into recycling. And then the next one was how many trash barrels are people putting out? So there are, so the largest number is people are putting out one, and if you correlate that with the 64 gallon, that means that a majority of people in town are putting out the appropriate amount. Like that was the rule that we set about 5 years ago, 164, 235 gallon, 232 gallon
Yeah, 32.
carts. And then second, let's see, what did I, oh yeah, so there's like a small number of people who are saying that they're putting out 3 barrels. But for the most part, I think most of us, like Kathy said, are doing what we can.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Poor Stephanie. Everyone gets a clap. Who's up now? Jen or
David.
David?
Good evening. David Greenbaum with the Groveland Board of Health. I don't have a lot to say. I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said here, but I will just make 1 or 2 points about the carts. Having gone through this in the community that I work full-time in, they do clean the streets up quite a bit when they're used, and they do help reduce neighborhood pests like squirrels, raccoons, skunks, and rodents in particular. So, I think that all the concerns that have been said about the current contract are valid. I'm not going to rehash them, but I'm going to stop now and let's open it up to questions because I think enough has been said. So thank you.
We just have Jen. Yep.
Hi. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name's Jan Dempsey. I'm a member of the committee, and I get to do the fun stuff. I get to tell you a few things that you can do to divert stuff out of your trash. And to me, it's kind of a big challenge, probably drive my husband crazy, but I love to try to do everything I can to not throw it in the trash. We mentioned a lot of these things in our newsletter, Talking Trash, but that was quite a while ago that we sent that out. So some of you may already know about, some of them may be new to you, but it's exciting that there are ways in town that we can divert some of our trash. And one of the big ones is textiles and clothing and shoes. We actually have 5 bins around town where you can deposit those things, as long as they're in a plastic bag. And one of them is right here behind Town Hall. There's one at Phoenix Printing. There's one at the Water and Sewer Department on School Street, one at Washington Park, and at the Bagnell School. And it's easy peasy. You make your collection, you put it in your car, and the next time you go in that direction, you can just drop it off. Also, I do want to mention that the Congregational Church has a thrift shop, and they take gently used clothing and household items, and all of their sales go to other nonprofits. So that's another great place that you can use. I can't believe that every time I go on the Staples website, they have more and more things that they will take for recycling. It's amazing because you think, oh, they just take toner cartridges and stuff like that. But actually, they also take, I noticed today, they take coffee brewers that are broken. They take batteries, even the single use. School supplies like markers that are all dried out that your kids have used, they take that too. And often when you bring your recycling there, you get a discount. If you're going there anyway to make a purchase, you do get a discount. So you can find this whole list on staples.com/stores/recycling. And it really is a comprehensive list. It's great. There is a depository now by the Tea Garden that takes books. And also, often, our own library will take book donations on Groveland Day for their book sale. They don't take it in advance, but on Groveland Day, you can take books for the book sale. The other thing is plastic bags. I have an example on the table over there. You can look at it later. All the different plastic bags that you can just put in another bag and take to Market Basket when you do your shopping. The receptacle is right by the can machine. And it's amazing when you, even if you try not to buy a lot of plastic, the wrapping really does add up. So there's an example of that at the table if you want to look at later. And I do want to mention too, composting. That was brought up a lot tonight. And it was great on the survey to see that a lot of people are already doing it in their own backyards. Because composting, food waste actually makes up about 25% of trash, total trash that's produced. And what happens is food waste is very heavy, one thing. So when they do the tipping fee, that's a high cost to have the food waste in our trash. The other thing is that all that food waste is really products from the soil that don't end up going back into the soil, and our soil is getting depleted. So composting is a way to put those precious nutrients back into the soil. And I just wanted to mention quickly 3 ways that I know that people are doing it. Some people have chickens and they do it that way in their backyard. Other people have a plastic home composter or made out of wood or whatever they've decided, and they just put their scraps in and their yard waste and they turn it and they make their own compost. Another way is some people in town have signed up with Black Earth Compost, and the cart is over there too in our display section. And Black Earth Compost will pick up your food waste either weekly or bi-weekly. It depends on what you've decided with them on the contract. And basically right now I checked, the weekly pickup is $20.99 a month, and bi-weekly is $16.99 per month. That was as of today on their website. But the great thing about that service is they even take your bones, meats, cheeses, things that you really can't put in your backyard compost very easily, and pizza boxes that are too soiled to recycle. So that's another option. And another one that some people have been curious about is a machine that's called a food cycler. And I have an example of that on the table too as well. And anybody's free to look at that afterward. This is something you can do in your own home. You collect your food scraps, and then you put it in the food cycler, and it actually chops it up and dehydrates it and makes it into a product that you can use in your garden and your plantings. And Kathy thought, and I see why she did, I have an example of what the product looks like, and it's in the lettuce container there. It's not spoiled lettuce. It's actually an example of what the product looks like. So, and I'm happy to show that to anybody after as well.
Right.
And finally, I just want to mention, for those that don't know, here in the foyer, we have a collection with TerraCycle. One is for razor blades and razors, and the other one is for Arm & Hammer toothpaste tubes. So as we go along, the committee also hopes to have more options available to everyone. But that's just the beginning, and again, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight.
Jan, can you do me a favor,
Yep.
actually? Can you just, because I think there's some confusion about textiles, can you
Yeah.
just explain, like, it's not necessarily like a shirt that you're donating to Goodwill or something that goes in that
Right,
box? It's
right.
actually
You
stuff that,
can,
and what happens to the textiles when you
well,
put?
you can put in towels, sheets, definitely shoes, and wearable clothing, and it gets sorted. The clothing that's wearable will go to be resold, and the rest of the textiles that are too far gone will get recycled and used for all kinds of things, stuffing and stuff like that. So is that what you wanted me to
Yes,
say?
exactly,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I don't mean to confuse you, but if your clothing is really in good shape, you might think of a thrift shop, because people come in every day to purchase. All right, and we can answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, Okay, so that's all of us having said our small piece. I just want to mention, in case somebody has to leave, if they have another appointment, on the table over there is a little exit ticket. You don't have to put your name on it. If you could just answer the 3 questions, and if you want to write anything on the back to us, that's nice. Please do so. I know, I know honestly that this topic is a hot button in town. There is no judgment here. No one is saying you have to somehow figure out by next July how to put all of your trash in a 35-gallon cart. Okay, because my husband has been screaming at me that he can't do it. Okay. So all of these transitions don't come easily. So we're not going to make it like I said, a shock and awe. And that's why we wanted to do a public information session. We wanted to dispel the rumors that we've made up our minds and that's it and this is that. You've probably seen different times when we've had people in and they've been talking about the pay-as-you-throw bags. They've been talking about pay-as-you-throw carts. They've been talking about everything. Because, and even the landfills, we've talked about transfer station. We've talked about everything because we needed to. I mean, how else are you going to learn about this stuff? I had no idea how many different trash removal programs were in the towns surrounding us. Georgetown and Merrimack do not have the curbside pickup. And other towns have the curbside pickup, and then if you don't want to opt into it, you don't have to opt into it. You can do something on your own, but I'm sure there'll be some Board of Health regulations on that one. Looking at David. So now I guess we'll start with the people in the room for questions. If you want to ask a question, I thought we had 2 microphones that we could just pass around so people don't have to move all over. And if you could be so kind as to say your name and where you live and then what your question is, or if it's just a concern that you wanted us to know about that we haven't specifically spoken of. So do we know where those 2 microphones went to?
Mike has one.
Oh, Mike has one. Where's the other one?
In the back of the room.
Hodges has one.
Ah, okay. So you guys want to do rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first or what? It doesn't matter to me. You gentlemen decide which one of you wants to ask your question. Or state,
Does anybody want to ask a question? Maybe we'll put it that way.
well, they have the microphone, so I assume
Chris gave them.
Oh, you were giving them, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to embarrass you or put you on the spot. That's me, foot in my mouth again. Okay, would someone like to ask a question or state something? Please pass them a microphone. No wonder they're both glaring at me. I've now alienated 2 more people.
What happened to this program?
Oh, we have it still. That's the overflow bag, and I
I
know.
was the only one I ever saw use it.
Oh, no, I did.
I've used it many times.
me.
Is that mic on? Can you make sure the light is green?
Nobody's using it.
I don't think the mic is on, is it?
Okay.
So I'd like to know 2 things, I guess.
Go ahead.
Make sure the mic is green.
I don't think it's on.
I don't know. I'm not good with microphones.
How's that? Is that better?
No, it's still on.
It's
Well,
not working.
can you hear me?
Well, hand him, give him the other mic. Wemby, this one. No, but,
We need it for the TV and for the recording, sorry.
yeah, that's all right. The other mic probably works. We have so many microphones.
Try this one. This has got a nice green light. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this was pay-as-you-go.
That's the overflow bag.
Right. If
Yes.
I had more trash, I bought these for $25 at the store.
Yep.
And I paid more because I had more trash.
Yes,
So what happened?
We're still using those.
yes.
No, we're not.
Well, we're
You're
supposed
supposed
to.
to.
So let me ask you this, the gentleman from the state. If the town entered into a contract to have this type of system that a truck picks up, is it something where the company wants everyone to have the same size? It is. And you keep talking about the 36 or 35 gallon one?
Yes.
I mean, I haven't inspected my neighbor's trash recently, but maybe I'll do it the next couple of weeks. I don't think anybody on my street could get all their trash in that.
Agreed, and that also we heard through the survey. So what we've been discussing, and I would mention from the state too, is the use of two 35s. So that would also be easier to manage, the 35 if you have a longer driveway, and you would have two. So you'd actually have more room than you have now, but it would also lead to, at some further juncture, if you felt that you could reduce down, then you would be released from the fee for the additional cart.
Well, you anticipate my last question,
Yes.
which is if the town enters into a contract where we're all using a 35-gallon, if I want 5 of them, as long as I'm paying for them, that's okay?
I know, I was looking, that's a question we have to look into some more. I believe in Boxford, they are allowing people to purchase additional carts and pay additional fees. So they get one cart and they pay $175 a year, and I believe you can get more. So I think the concern that we would have on the town side, and this is something we haven't actually discussed, is that when you get up to a certain amount, we would wonder, are you really a commercial establishment and not a resident? That would be the concern. But just to have like 2, which is now more than we allow, would be 70 gallons, plus the overflow bag, which you can put on top, gives you a
Okay,
lot.
that raises another good question. So would the overflow bag program continue
Yes,
even with this?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's a big help then.
Yes,
Sorry, did you tell us your name?
John,
And you live in Groveland?
right.
yep. He has the purple bags.
Just ask people to state their name when they started talking.
Oh,
Thank you.
can I just ask, did you buy them here at the town hall or at Obashan?
No, I bought them at the convenience store
Oh,
across from the Chinese restaurant.
oh, up there, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I was going in there buying these things all the time.
okay. I knew they were around. I've seen most of them at Obashan.
I buy them at Jerry's.
Jerry's has them too,
Yep,
yep,
Jerry's has
okay. Great, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Go ahead. Go ahead.
To clarify what you were saying, is that if everybody gets the 2 35-gallon,
Yes.
there's no fee.
No,
35-gallon.
there will be a fee for the additional 35. We have to, we have to we want to make an incentive too, but also it's the budgeting part of the trash and tonnage cost. It's occupying a high percentage of our flexible, where we can move money around. And we can't control tonnage. You know what I mean? Like, we can try to guesstimate it, but we don't know.
Well, I understand the budgeting piece, because we
Yeah.
all do that.
Yeah.
We all have a budget. I just retired in December.
Yay, congratulations.
But I don't have the resources I used to have. And it seems like you're saying incentive. It's not incentive. It's more of a penalty that if you use more because you're now charging for that. At what point does it become where the nickel and diming through state or whatever, that hits us all? And we don't have a lot of room to increase our budget and to do some of these things that the town wants, whether it's an override or something like that. That's where it comes into play, is at what point we have a budget that we have to meet as well.
So I think the incentivizing is to get you to look more at recycling, reusing, repurposing, and not going to get an extra tote. The idea is to reduce what you're putting into the waste stream and do other things with things that you can get out of the waste stream and reduce the tonnage that we're actually putting into the incinerators and the landfills. That brings down the tonnage that the town is paying for, and it also lowers what you're putting into the waste stream. That's the idea behind the smaller cart.
And
I
most
know it doesn't
importantly-
sound like it's possible, but I can tell you, now my boys are grown, but I had a family of 5. I put out 2 to 4 of those green bin size things every week, and I put out 1 barrel. It can be done. You just have to look at what you're putting in the trash.
Yeah, and to your point about cost and overrides, this is what we're trying to avoid.
that the escalating cost of trash and recycle is eventually going to force this town to make a decision about how to fund that portion of the budget. You know, just for example, you all know that the biggest portion of the budget goes to the schools, right? But did you know that the fourth largest item as a percentage of the budget is actually trash? That is a problem. That's an unsustainable problem in the long run. We don't want to have to go to you folks and say we need an override simply because the trash cost has become so overwhelming that there's no other way to pay for it. So this is a way to try and reduce and contain those costs into the future so that we don't have to come to the residents and say, we need money and we need you to dig into the pockets that you don't have for the money that you don't have. You know what I mean? So it is trying to avoid and avert that situation that, you know, it's inevitable if we keep going down the road we're going.
So you don't consider the $175 to be a tax?
Well, again, getting back to Matt's point, it's, you know, if I choose to keep my home at 80 degrees all through the winter and you choose to keep it at 68, well, then I'm paying, you know, for what I used and you paid for what you used. So proportionally, you know, it's the same. You know,
I'm still paying $175 for something I'm getting I'm not getting for free. I know, I can tell you what my tax bill is every year, but I'm certainly not getting it for free. The point is that I'm paying now this additional $175 for the same service.
That example,
Actually, that's correct, less service than I've had since I moved to this town.
but that example was Boxford. That is not what has been proposed here in Groveland. And I'm not saying that that may not happen, but that is not what has been proposed here in Groveland, $175. There
just
is
an
a
example.
proposal that, to say that if you get the extra tote, there will be a fee, but that fee has not been determined. So that $175 is what Boxford is doing. It's just an example of what one community did to offset their trash costs.
But the 35 has been decided?
No.
That's not been decided.
Okay.
We're just saying that's an example of what is being proposed.
Yes, and I'm sorry if we confuse you by jumping around so much, because this is what we're doing. We're researching. Andover has a fee. There's fees that range from $50 to several $100s. You know, and I agree with you. I think the high fee in addition to the taxes is not fair, right? Because when you start to pay that fee, you're not getting a lower tax bill. You're getting future savings that you don't really see. You know what I mean? So we all know we're talking about with general overrides, right? We did vote a general override for trash, and then after the first year, that money can go anywhere. There's nothing keeping it in trash. If we want our curbside pickup, if we like having that service, which I think we all do, we need to find a way to protect it so that it doesn't get put on the override, you know, because the past 2 years, we've been very close to needing an override because of the proposed school budget. Fortunately, this year again, after we met with the school and we talked to them and we explained what we're trying to do here to manage our costs, including the trash, that we don't have the ability to come up with the extra $550,000. We don't have it. They now are putting in some revenue generating items into their budget so that they can not have to come for us for $550,000 more than we can afford. So I look at it like each side is doing its part, you know, and I know it doesn't feel fair because it's not really fair. Prices have gone up everywhere. But I'd be lying if I told you we could lower the tax rate. We can't. We're just, you know, our budget's within $50 of it. And we're trying to do anything else we can to avoid putting a general override out there and forcing taxes up again.
It was literally $377 this year.
So this will be a cost, but it should be one that then would demand from anybody who sits on the select board, because we're the ones that put things onto the override, it should demand from them that trash not be the thing that goes on the override. This should protect trash. You know, that's the one service I know that people were most upset with when it was put on an override, because they felt like they're being held hostage. Are you going to cut our trash services if this override doesn't pass? And honestly, as a member of the select board, my answer would be, no, we can't possibly do that. So we need to make sure we don't get close to that ever again. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Nick Tolios from Crampton Ave. Couple quick questions, and one is, what I'm concerned about, and I'm glad we had the meeting, is I was under the impression it was being rammed down our throat and it was going to happen instantly, and I'm glad to hear you're still working the issues, and there's a lot to be, to understand and stuff. A couple of things I'm concerned about is, the gentleman from the state mentioned about being fair and stuff, but you get a family of 2 and you get a family of 5, and their requirements are totally different. And I don't see that being addressed, and I hope that's part of your discussion when you have that. And then the next question is going to be recycling. You put out 5 of those bins, I think you said there, which is great. I'm glad you were able to do that. But for some reason, I thought I heard, and I hope I'm wrong, that it was going to be 1 barrel of that and 1 barrel for recycling. And if that's the approach you're going, then the other concern I have, and that's going to be looking at the gentleman from the state, is you got to solve the problem from both ends. Right now, it's all being done at our end, the consumer end, and you got to do it from the state. As an example, is the plastic bags. Haverhill, you can't get plastic bags now. It's got to come from the top down, not just the bottom up, to be able to have this work. When I buy something from Amazon, you get this box, it's this big, with a book inside it. I mean, like, come on, get real, Yep. So it's got to come from both ends, and I hope they are also working at their end to make this happen.
So
I actually have a bigger family than Dave. I have 4 children, 1 son-in-law, 1 daughter-in-law, and 5 grandchildren. And it's not easy, but most, I would say 40 out of 52 weeks of the year, we can get all our trash into 1 32-gallon trash bale. Now, we had to go out and buy a larger recycle container because I'm not putting out 4 or 5 little totes. That just became ridiculous.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that even with my family, as large as it is, and there's a lot of diapers and everything else, we've been able to do it. It's not undoable, put it that way. It's not an impossible mission. It just has to be thought out a little bit better sometimes maybe than we currently do. I know my wife is a fanatic about, hey, can that be recycled? She'll take it out of the trash and throw it into the recycle bin. She'll look it up. Maybe it takes that kind of fanaticism, but I can assure you it can be done even with a family size of mine.
I think then we need maybe training for the recycling aspect as to what is truly recyclable. Like if you got a can of nuts and stuff, all right, the bottom's all metal, the side's paper, and they probably don't want that. It's oil inside the inside, so that goes into the trash. Where do you draw the line?
I think there is an educational aspect, but I think it's also fair to point out that when we talk about a 35-gallon trash container, we're also talking about a 96-gallon recycling container.
I didn't hear that. That's good to know that.
I want to be clear about that the larger recycling container gives you more space to put stuff for recycling and not have to put out those little tiny things where trash is blowing all around the neighborhood. And that was part of my point about keeping the neighborhood cleaner and things like that. These things will do that, whereas those little 14, 18-gallon totes don't do that, in my opinion, because I see it all over my neighborhood.
With the windy days we had, trust me, it's all over the
And
street.
I know Bill wanted to make a statement. Brian, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things I want to touch on. I mean, those are great questions that, again, the 96-gallon or even 64, 96, I think that does provide a lot of space for recycling. Because you're right, a huge piece of this is, if we're talking about ways to divert out of the waste stream, having access for recycling. And then, so I guess just another thing to touch on some things the state is doing. There's a lot of support of different ways to how do we make sure residents have access to more recycling opportunities, more diversion opportunities. Like one of my slides, like the residential waste reduction was just one piece of the master plan. But so I've been in this role for like 6 months now, and I previously worked in like recycling on the private side, but I can like just tell you from my personal experience, I think that the state's doing a lot to really incentivize, to really think about this solid waste master plan, think about ways to incentivize composting, giving a lot of money to support different drop-off programs or different grants for towns that have cardboard compactors people can bring their cardboard to. So yeah, just a kind of a little bit of assurance, at least from the way I see it, that I think a lot of resources and attention is realizing that this isn't a single prong issue. This isn't something that, oh, residents just need to stop, make a little more trash, then we're going to solve this problem. But there's a lot of different angles that need to be approached, and like very specific angles in some case. Like, for example, like one of those obscure ones was like construction and demolition. We have a construction and demolition like working group thinking about when we take down buildings, like how do we do that better to take care of that material. So yeah, all that to say, to hopefully that provides a little bit of insight.
Yeah, I mean, I know one size doesn't fit all, you know, and that's my concern. Is sometimes I feel like the committee here is going to come up with one size and that's it, and I just think with family sizes and things like that, there may be some leeway that has to be thought about. That's all.
Correct. We'll have to have some kind of a standard, and there has to be some reason that supports the standard that makes sense to all of us in Groveland. You know, because if you don't think it's fair, you're just going to be angry about it. We don't want people to be angry about it. But then once that standard is there, if there's an outlier, someone who has a particularly long driveway, or there's been other things in other towns that have facilitated the need to modify what the person gets for a cart or something, and that does get taken care of. You know, that individualized. And we're a small enough town that I know our town administrator talks to lots of people on a regular basis all the time. So those needs will be addressed. They won't get lost in the shuffle. But yeah, there has to be, you can't let people go buy their own bins, because the reinforced bins are the ones that are designed for this process. And if we ended up, you know, the examples are, if we ended up doing 164, then we'd probably have a fee on everyone at some amount, which has not yet been determined. If we did the 234s, there might be the fee attached to the second one, so that if at any point somebody thinks they can do without it, okay, fine. All of that's just still being tossed around, if you will. But what is actually happening is that we've gotten a grant for the composting program. Unfortunately, it does not pay the monthly cost, but it pays the $80 startup fee for about, I think, 50 people. And that's a start. I mean, I wish they'd give us the money for the monthly fee too, but maybe that's another thing that this committee can put their heads together and think about, whether that could be accommodated in the cost of the trash program, so that if you were willing to go composting, you wouldn't have to pay a fee for that as well. Because I get it, fee, right? This 2 weeks ago, my husband and I finally cut the cord with Comcast, and we had, being, you know, our age, we had quite the fights for a week on how to stream and what to stream and where that show is, and we're still kind of like on rocky ground with it, but it's a huge cost. You know, the triple play bundle that we loved, and you know, my husband retired, I'm going towards that age, and so yeah, I get it. You don't want to have to pay for something you don't want to have to pay for. But we do need to transition our trash industry towards a sustainable model for this town. But again, every time you speak to us and you tell us something that you didn't understand, it makes it more clear that we haven't been clear. So coming here and telling us this is really great. I think now it'd be great. Do you want to speak? And then after that, if we
I
had.
think there's another
Yes,
gentleman here.
two more people, and then maybe if there's questions online, I feel like we've ignored that. Are there? Rebecca will look. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Steve Baker,
Yep.
Sunset Circle. Just a quick question. I know we were kind of going down the path of addressing it in the question that the other gentleman just asked, but has there been discussion about basing I understand the need for a single cart size because of pickup and things like that. Has there been discussion of basing the number of carts that a house would get included on the house size? Like if it's a certain number of bedrooms, a certain number of residents, and why wouldn't that work? Because we do it with, septic, for example. You have to have a certain size based on the size of your house. So it's not one size fits all. And I feel like this is similar. So I'm just curious if that's something that you guys have discussed.
I have not discussed it. I mean, we could discuss it. I think, since you brought it up, we will discuss it. I think the difficulty would be that, once again, the same kind of pushback that I read from some of the comments online. I don't want to go up to someone and say because they have 4 bedrooms, they got to have 2 carts and pay for the second one.
I'm not saying pay for the second one. I'm saying why couldn't that be a consideration to be included?
Well, because then somebody that maybe has 3 bedrooms and doesn't get the 2 carts wants 2 carts. I mean, I just think I don't want to overcomplicate what we're trying to achieve here. We want to keep it a common sense, straightforward, based on the tonnage cost, based on something that makes sense to everybody. So to start going into a lot of different other angles at this juncture, we can certainly discuss it. But again, I'd be lying if I said that I think it would work out, because we've looked at, I want to say at least 20 other towns, and we've been researching for 2 years. So we've looked at a lot of contracts, and I have not seen that yet.
I think the idea is to bring the tonnage down, and by looking at it based upon the size of the house, and I don't deal with septic a lot, but when I do deal with it, I get what you're saying. The size of the tank and the leach field has to be sized based on the number of bedrooms. So, if you do that and you say you have a 4-bedroom house, so they would qualify for, say, 4 carts, you're not bringing the amount of tonnage down. It's actually increasing the amount of tonnage based upon what we already have. So looking at it from that respect, you're actually going in the opposite direction. The idea is to bring the tonnage down. It's to increase recycling and bring solid waste down.
Yeah, and I guess the thing I question with that, and this may be my lack of understanding, if I have a family of 5, similar, right? If I have to buy a second one, I'm still putting out the same tonnage.
So that's right, but in this case, it may be 1 out of 5 people is actually buying the second one. 1 out of 10 people is buying the second one. Do you know what I mean? So you are reducing the tonnage, and then at some point, you're going to turn around and you're going to say, all right, so 2 of my kids have grown up, they've left. I've reduced the size of the amount of the waste that I'm putting into the trash stream just by reducing the number of people in the house. I don't need that second cart anymore.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's something that should be considered as you guys are going through this. And certainly, the amount of work you guys have done is fantastic.
Yeah, Steve, the other point, to the point of the number of bedrooms, the widow across the street has a 4-bedroom house, but she's a widow. She lives alone. I have a 2-bedroom house, but I've got 4 kids. Is it really fair to that widow that she pays more than I do? The other point is, if you're paying for an extra barrel, you may be contributing to more tonnage, but you're also subsidizing the cost. You're defraying the cost of the town by paying for the extra barrel that you use above and beyond what everybody else uses. So, yes, it does add to the tonnage, but the contributors to that added tonnage are paying for it, as opposed to
Again, going
everybody.
back to looking at it as a utility, if you want your house to be 10 degrees warmer than mine, then you're going to pay that extra utility. So it's the same concept.
How about online? Do we have some questions that we haven't really addressed at all?
We've got one back here.
Oh,
Dick Hodges, 35 Union Street.
sorry.
Personally, all 4 sons are adults and gone, but when we were a family of 6, this 35 would not have held half of what we would be throwing out. So my wife and I, we could easily get along with this. But I'm thinking I'm not the only person in town. There are people in town that have 2, 3, 4 kids, and the trash adds up. In fact, this last Christmas, after we opened everything, I burned all the paper goods in my wood stove. Ed tells me I probably should be arrested for that, but I'll trust the people in here just to let that be a minor confession. the fact that this isn't going to a town vote tells me that the trash committee is going to make this decision anyways, no matter what anybody in this room says, or what anybody, and I've watched a number of the meetings on TV, and I appreciate the effort that people have put into it, but it seems to me that the trash committee is, and I'd like to, just as a vocabulary example, the word grant is our money. Don't think that that's somebody else's money.
Okay.
That's something we have to beg for, and we have to be rather sophisticated. In fact, the University of New Hampshire actually has a course on writing grants. And I think Rebecca knows exactly, because she's written some of our grants. Not just anybody can do that. It's pretty labor intensive.
Okay, so, Mr. Hodges, I want to address this right now because I've read a lot of the comments online, so I realize that there is some misinformation being spread that just got stated again tonight.
Well, some of
No,
this,
let me
I'm
finish.
hoping
I
I'm
have the
wrong.
floor. Mr. Hodges, I have the floor.
You can have the floor.
I do. Thank you.
And the ceiling and the walls.
Please be respectful.
That was so nice. Good to know that.
Thank you.
No, I'm going to finish, and then you can. Okay, this is a civil meeting, so I'm going to stay civil. We are not the committee that makes a decision. We are a research and recommendation committee. And I think you, of all people, would know that, having served on the school board, that the select board is responsible for contracts. Contracts do not go to the ballot, because what are you going to do if the ballot fails? You're not going to sign the police contract. You're not going to sign the contracts. Go to the town meeting for funding. So all contracts are subject to funding. And this is a well-known thing in our town by anybody that's been participating in government as you have been. So I'm more than willing to take a few punches in the face for bringing up this difficult topic. I know it's not a popular topic, but it's very, very unfair to intentionally spread misinformation and accuse these volunteers that I'm sitting with here tonight of trying to ram anything or make any decision because they're a recommending committee. And anybody that's saying differently is just trying to make this difficult task that we're doing even more difficult.
I'm hoping my comment was incorrect.
It is incorrect. As she said, we don't make the decision. We recommend, and that's all we have the authority to do.
Well, I have someone standing to my right who actually has the answer to our problem, but I understand that is it the CPA that you're involved with? We have a committee in town that no matter what the financial issues are, whether it's trash, schools, or what have you, we have a committee that will put in and spend millions of dollars on dog parks, walkways.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
think this is
I'm
the
gonna-
time or the
Mr.
place.
Hodges, we have people waiting to get the questions answered. We have to stay on this topic. The CPC has meetings, I believe, monthly. You're welcome to go to those meetings.
And I've watched a number of them.
So-
I'm just wondering why we aren't using millions of
Going
dollars
to,
that's in
once
their
again,
pocket.
Respectfully ask that you next question come forward. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey folks, Chris Goodwin, Hillblue Jive, and thanks again for doing this. Appreciate all the efforts you're all doing. Just a couple quick questions. First one for Bill, I think. So just on the pay-as-you-throw program, so does that actually impact the existing line item for trash in the budget, or is that just that line item in the budget stays the same and the pay-as-you-throw is on top of that assessment?
The pay-as-you-throw, I believe, if the accounting would work, it would be an offset to the trash
It is.
cost each month. Am I right? So it would be like if it was public accounting, it'd be a contra account set up against the account that pays the fees for the trash. So the bag collections for the over bags, if you wanted an extra tote, it would go into a fund that would go against the cost and reduce the cost.
So it would overall reduce the burden for that budget line item for the town?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And then the other question I have, and this probably isn't an answer today, and that's okay. I think everyone's concern is really very basic. Will all my trash fit in the barrel I put out to the curb, right? Has there been any analysis done based on our last fiscal year's tonnage what the actual cost would be per barrel combo. So if we have a 35 trash and a 96 recycling, what that cost approximately would be. If we have a 64 and a 64, what that would be. So you can have the comparison of what each option looks like compared to our most recent tonnage data.
So I understand what you're asking. So the only response I can give you is something that Brian has shared with us on several occasions, that for the most part, you give somebody a bigger trash barrel, they tend to fill it. Okay? And that doesn't really answer the question, because you can't really foresee. We can look at the trends, and I have spreadsheets all over the place of the trends on our trash during the pandemic, and we came down off of that a little bit. And we're not, I would say right now, our tonnage is not spiking. The tonnage is not like ramping up. We're doing well as far as where we're at. But what is spiking, because of the landfill problem and the lack of places to take this stuff.
Right.
is-
I mean,
is the-
understood that there is
yeah.
a diminishing rate of return for the available space to put the trash in recycling. However, taking a very, and I tend to take a very business aspect of
Yep.
things. So we can take our last known full fiscal year's tonnage.
Yes.
You know, add a certain percentage for just natural growth, just to have a little buffer on top of you for year-over-year growth. And then take what the cost would be per combination.
Oh, I see what you're
approximately,
saying.
And then say, here's what that would be, here's what this would be, here what this would be, so that people can see that any option that's being provided, this would be the actual, well, approximated, because nothing's actual till the contract's done, approximated impact for this combination.
You can extrapolate it to a certain point, Chris, but here's becomes the problem. The big variable is how much weight is in that container. Because while the container is 35 gallons and volume-wise, it holds the same amount. Weight-wise, it may be considerably different. And the other variable is, do you have more than one tote? Are you buying overage bags? So that adds to the tonnage, and that's not so easily to extrapolate over the course of time. So that makes that calculation rather difficult going forward.
I think our,
Address it like kind of generally, and I know I moved through really quickly on one of those slides, but it showed the pounds per household for communities across the state that have the 64 gallon, and then the 48 and the 35. And then, so for context, I'm trying to do my best to remember, it was around like 1669 for the 64 gallon, and I believe in 2023, data for Groveland was 1635, which makes sense. You guys have a 64 gallon or 64 gallon limit, so you guys are behaving like a 64 gallon community currently. So I would expect if you did like so if we went 64 gallon carts, I'd expect the tonnage to remain similar. Depending, again, I think in 2024, I think you guys had closer to 9. It was closer to 1730. It was like 100 pounds higher per household, so that kind of bumps you up a little over that. But generally, I think the data would probably bear out that it would be, if you were doing a 35-gallon program with the additional option to lease that second cart, you probably fall somewhere within that $13.50 for 35 gallons and that $16.50 where you're at now, and the cost savings would be, so wherever you place it within that, would be the tipping fee. Well, partially would be attached to the tipping fees. And if you really want to go in deep, you could be like, well, what's the recycling how much of that's going to go recycling processing? That's a little tougher to estimate. But yeah, so I think 64 gallons, you guys probably won't see a reduction in weight. Hopefully you're still doing other things. If you guys will go to the 64 gallons, I mean, hopefully other things are still done for waste reduction. But like generally, like the data on our end shows that the most effective way for waste reduction is to implement that pay-as-you-throw program. So, but I'd be happy to, I've done a little bit of analysis, but they have a technical assistant, the town has a technical assistance grant for me, which is just like 70 hours of my time to work on this pay-as-you-throw program. So, I mean, I'd be happy to do any additional analysis that either that the committee, if you work with the committee and get that question to me, I'd be happy to do any more analysis.
Thank you.
Good. I do want to mention, because I know it's getting late, just one second. We do have a little exit ticket, and it's not just, because we want to see smiley faces, because one of the questions is asking you if you would be interested in the larger size recycling container. And the reason we're putting that question out right now is based on the survey data, that seemed to be one of the positive responses that we saw. And that's something the committee is now kicking around, like as part of this transition, perhaps not waiting to the last minute to change everything at one time, but perhaps the town could consider going to the 96, buying that, providing that within the current contract. We won't get any money off the current contract. They'll want us to extend, and we're not. We want to see other proposals. But we're wondering if that's something that people feel would be useful right now, and then that would give us that one step towards the transition. So that's why we put those out, and I know there's only, a handful here, but spread the word that we're interested in that. Okay. Oh, yes, Mike, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Dempsey. So I like props, so I brought a couple tonight, and this is my favorite one.
That's 20 gallons?
This is a 20-gallon can that 50 years ago, this was what everybody had on the curb.
Oh my.
And something's gone wrong that now we've gone from 20 gallons to 64 gallons. That's a 300% increase in 50 years, which is crazy. What's changed? How have we changed in 50 years? Why are we throwing more stuff away? Are we eating more? What are we doing? But there's something wrong. But, this was typical, and this was what we got away with. Maybe you had two of them if you were overly wealthy and could afford it. And once those things went out about 6 months, they get all banged up, and you couldn't even fit 20 gallons in there. So that's a good example compared to that 64-gallon bin over there. The other thing that I thought was, if we went with the 35-gallon container, for a typical family of 5, that means that's 7 gallons of waste per person in the family. So my daughter lives over on 7 Star Road, and they could easily fit their trash. I know they're not generating 7 gallons per person, especially a couple of the younger kids. So, like you said, I think it's important to try to reduce. Maybe we'll never get back to those days, but I think we can do a little bit better than giving everyone 64 gallons and everybody feels bad. You feel bad if you don't put the full trash can out, so you look around your house looking for more stuff to throw away. Thank you.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mike.
So, another question? Go ahead.
DJ, yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, DJ McNulty, Valley Farm Road. First, thank you all. I appreciate it. I know this is volunteer work, and you guys are, just trying to make a recommendation. I'm in full support of automated. I think that'll help substantially. Has the board made a decision, or the subcommittee made a decision for their recommendation towards the select board yet?
I can answer that. We made a recommendation, and then it went out to survey. We added to the survey, and the results of the survey are pretty telling. They don't want just that option of 134. So I believe that's off the table, the 134. Much as anybody will say they want you to transition to that other towns are doing that, we, I think, clearly recognize that we're not there yet. And I don't know when we'll get there. I don't know where there is sometimes. But I think that, overall, like, what we're trying to achieve, other than, making this a little more challenging, right, to try and reduce your trash, is, to to leave this world a little better off than when we came in, because if we continue with what we're doing right now, not only is it expensive for our town budget, but it's expensive across the country and the state. It's just, we have to try to do what we can. So I do like little things, like I heard a tip on the radio to put a small little recycle can up in the bathroom, because you get like shampoo bottles and things, like chuck them in there. Because usually, if I put them aside to bring downstairs to the recycle bin, do they make it there? Maybe not. So,
I just
You know-
didn't know if you guys had made a decision on the recommendation to. the
no,
select
we
board.
made that one recommendation to the board, and they pushed back and said, let's get the survey out. We
But
talked-
nothing final.
Yeah, and
from you
we.
guys. Okay.
No, but the survey is pretty telling that about over 60% of the town feels that they need access to 64 gallons of
agreed.
trash. Yeah.
I just
and-
didn't know if you guys
And
had-
so, yeah, we're not in a mode to pull the rug out from under people and make life unbearable, you know. That's not the goal at all. We're just trying to do as much research and look at as many things that are going on as we possibly can. And honestly, beyond just the carts, there's just so much more at stake here in this contract. Additional fees, surcharges, and things that we've been paying, and that now, thanks to Arthur and Rebecca going to the hauler meetings, hopefully we will get a really much better contract. Not that we had a horrible one, but the contracts we've had rolling over for the past 20 years didn't really do anything if trash didn't get picked up. We've never had anything in there that says, if we, you know, if they don't come get your street, well, then tough luck. They're supposed to get it Saturday, oh, they didn't, too bad. Maybe Monday, right? So, you know, you pay a lot of money in taxes here.
Yep.
The services matter, yeah.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, I just want, it was just
Yeah.
so
we're
thank you for going.
We're
into-
trying to come up with a product that we can fit into the town, but we're wondering, is there any step now that folks would be interested in, like a larger recycling bin? That was the one thing we kicked around at one of our last meetings. And if that's something everyone wants to hold off on, fine. But the one thing that's not probably going to happen is all different, like 5 scenarios. You know, when we give the final information that we can gather to the select board, we might have 2 things or something that might work, that people can live with. And that'll probably be what it is.
Okay.
And then they'll decide between that, because
Okay.
the select board decides the contracts.
Okay, yep, absolutely. Thank you. So with that, currently, our current rule,
Yeah.
bylaw, is supposed to be 164 and unlimited recycling.
Correct.
Currently is our
Yeah.
rule. So I know the new is talking about either 35/96 or 64/96, which is, you know, my preferred. But I think, like we talked about steps,
Yeah.
when we looked at the survey, there were, I don't know, it was 50%. I mean, let's call it half, were probably more than just 164, because people are under the assumption, when I first moved here, it was 264s. Prior to that was unlimited. So you still have people that have been here for a long time that, one, don't know or don't care. I pay the taxes, whatever the situation is.
Right.
But when you go to an automated and you only can have 164 and 196, and the company hopefully does not pick any, unless you pay for the extras. But I'm talking standard, no extra fees or anything like that. That in itself is going to cut down on our tonnage.
So,
Correct.
yeah.
But that's,
But as of 2021, this contract we're in right now, the contract previously was 4 barrels. And when we met with Waste Management to talk about the cost that they were proposing, the first thing they said is, you're like the only town in the state that allows 4 barrels. So we said, oh, okay. It's not something that I'd ever thought about, you know. And that's what started us looking into this, and that what eventually led to the select board appointing a committee to look into this more and more and more. So we do have a 2-barrel limit now. It's either 64 1-barrel or 232s. And we do actually have a pay-as-you-throw program, because you can throw out extra with the overflow bag. Now you can do that. You can do that now, and there's
that
no
will continue.
limit on the overflow bags. And the revenue from the overflow bags does go back to offset the cost of trash. So we made one tiny step in 2021. And looking at the state survey of all the communities, at least now we're in line with where the rest of the state is.
So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And I have a family of 5
Yes.
and 3 young children. It's a lot of trash. And I do, I think, a great job at 164, and I'm slamming them in there as best I can, and I have 264 recycling.
Okay.
So I do as much as I can. But my point is, with the amount of trash that's put out right now, because people don't really, whether they don't understand or don't care, going to the automated will help with that reduction.
Yes.
We know that.
I might just maybe just say, like, I hope so. Like, that's definitely a possibility. But one thing we see in other communities that sometimes go from manual collection to automated and then go to the 64s is sometimes you do see a jump in tonnage, and it's kind of based off that idea. Is like now, so I think there will be some people you said like that are over and now coming down to 64, but there will also probably be some that are below 64. But now, because of that tendency to, once I have a 64 gallon, I fill up what I have, that kind of offsets that too. So I don't think it'd be certain that going to 64 would necessarily bring the tonnage down from where you're at now, but I would hope so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a data guy, right? I would like to see, like Chris had said, look at the tonnage, average tonnage cost, not just tonnage cost, total cost over the past years, and compare it to, that is my actual question, is do we know what the expected reduction or cost would be if we make a decision on the 64 versus 35 and the 96? Do we even know what that, we know we spent $755,000 last year for trash. What is it if we go, whatever decision is made, what is that cost going down to? So we see, is it worth our while? And for you guys to better understand that, to make a decision.
Okay, so I think Brian can speak to that, but also perhaps our town administrator, because she's going to have, not going out for a flat bid. It's going to be more of a discussion proposals.
But an idea of cost.
Yeah.
Like, do we have any idea of what it might be? Is it going to go to 800 anyway, or
All
is
that
it going to?
That could maybe type in after this, but so the way that works is this, irregardless of what the cart size is, that collection, a hauling piece will stay the same. What's going to fluctuate based off the cart size is going to be the tonnage. So it's not like, the waste management's not going to charge more or less based off of 64 or 35 inherently. It's all going to be in that variable tonnage rate, and so that's going to where it's going to be. Next year, $103 per ton in tipping fee versus whatever of that is offset, totally reduced, or some that would show back up in the lower recycling processing costs. So, like, just at the numbers I showed in that, if you take a 20% reduction between the 64 and the 35 gallon cart, again, it seems like it will be probably not quite 20% if you had the 235 plan, but that would be. So 103 times whatever the reduction would be like the high end, and would probably come in like a little bit lower than that, but still looking at, and that's annually. So then you're still looking at, so I think that's where these like waste reduction, when it comes to like municipal funds, really adds up, because you're saving that maybe it's $10,000 to $40,000 like annually on hauling savings. And then like the last thing I'll say is also the grant funding, which I thought one resident actually made a great point of, that's taxpayer money, and I think we're very like mindful of that. So I just want to kind of like iterate that point. So we should. I like to think that this grant money goes to good uses for waste reduction. And last thing is, so that would be $66,000. So for the 35 gallon cart program, the grant money would have $66,000, not annually, 1 year, versus the 64 gallon carts would have no grant funding.
Okay. Now, so the numbers that you guys put together, is that based state average? You do state average numbers, there's no regional breakdown, because obviously our costs might be higher than an intercity cost.
We do both. I mean, it's kind of a mixed map. The total 64 gallon to 35 gallon cart, that's across the state. The $103 tipping fee, that's specific to Groveland, and that like 20% reduction number was based specifically off Groveland's numbers. So
that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one town that I can point to in their study is Boxford. If you wanted to know more about like what savings might be when you go to the automated. They're the ones, they went out to bid, I believe in reading their report, if I remember correctly, they first went out to bid for their regular manual pickup. And then when they saw the price, they pulled back. And they pulled back off of Waste Management too at the last minute. They went to the automated and got different bids. So they did compile a pretty good summary report. That's the most current information I have about the transition from manual to automated. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, you know, we have to dig through this stuff. It's all buried. It's not like there's a chart out there. But we've, I think, you know, and it's also with Brian's help, giving us the overview of the state. We have a tremendous amount of information, tremendous amount of data. If that's something that people want to look at, I mean, we could put up in somewhere on the town website the state survey data. We could put up the, I have an Excel of our tonnage for, I don't know, 10 years or so maybe. Oh, okay. So, okay.
Multiple different like data sets that Mass DEP collects that we discuss at that Northeast Haulers meeting, so we get a general understanding. What are they doing? Are they including composting? Are they not including compost? Do they do yard pickup? Do they not do yard pickup? Do they do curbside bulk pickup? What works better? What vendors do they use? What are they charging? So we kind of go back and forth and kind of get a better understanding of what the prices could be. We don't know because we haven't negotiated with any of them at this point in time, but we have a general understanding of where we might fall if we were to reach out to them. But like you said, it's all about geography too. So if there's a plant that's right down the street, it's obviously going to be less for the hauler to take that trash or recycling to that facility as opposed to having to drive to Billerica or New Hampshire or somewhere else where they have to put and factor that into their cost that they submit. But that's something that we do look at, and it's just trying to figure out the specifics to Groveland.
The thing to remember, though, is no matter how you look at it, every pound you throw away is going to cost money. You know, so it's one of the things that we have now that we can have some control over is reducing our trash, because it's just, you know, it's just going to keep escalating. And the control we have is a challenge for all of us. You know, how can we do this for the greater good of our community and for the future of the planet, for our kids? You know, can we figure out different ways to reduce our trash? And I just think that's a really important goal. You know, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, it's going to take some determination, but this town's done it before. I've seen it. When we started curbside recycling, we didn't have any recycling at all in Groveland until we started that drop-off point behind Town Hall in the 90s. And it took 3 years at least, with volunteers coming out every Saturday to gather, you know, they gathered their stuff, they brought it, they were determined to get recycling going. And it happened. It took 3 years, but we did it. And now we have curbside recycling. And now we want to get rid of those little bins that we've had for, 30 years? Because one of the other problems with the little bins is they get all wet. You put them out in the rain or snow, everything gets wet. That adds to the cost of the tonnage of the recycling, and sometimes the cardboard is no good. So that's one of the reasons why this committee is excited about lidded carts for recycling as well. So I just really feel hopeful that we can all work together and figure out a creative way to reduce our costs, because we all want to do that, and just to make things better for the future.
Are there any questions online?
Has it already been discussed ad nauseum?
So there's just a few to follow up on, but not many. People have essentially added some comments, just how they feel about certain situations, about the difficulty. Sometimes it's not easy to compost given the proximity to wildlife. Somebody had asked if we can use the overflow bags, the driver will get out and dispose of it, so it's kind of counterproductive to the argument that's being made.
Wait, can we just address that while it's there, because that's a good one. The overflow bag on an automated system would be put right on top. I think, Dave, you described this to us, right? Or was it, you? One of you.
That tends to be the case.
And then they just lift the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Boom.
That also assumes that every household in Groveland would use an overflow bag, which is probably highly unlikely.
It'd also be, that's another one of those details that would be ironed out with the hauler. This different haulers have different preferences and,
Yep.
The next question was, will the recycling be bi-weekly?
That's to be determined, because we wanted to see if there's no real price differential in the contract to go pick it up every week versus every 2 weeks, then, yeah, pick it up every week. But if there's something significant in savings, we maybe look at that,
And the next question was more of a statement, but asking a question. But my understanding now, based on this discussion, is rather than increasing the taxes for the service, they want people to individually pay it. So technically, it is not placed under the tax bucket, but still is provided for the service. Correct?
It's pretty close. I mean, we're going to have the curbside pickup cost is clearly defined. That's easy, that's budgeted. It's the tonnage cost that we're kind of on the fence with how to deal with that.
And then the remaining comments that everyone was in favor of a larger recycling bin.
What was the larger?
Everybody's in favor of the 96.
Oh, they are.
Which is,
The question was, my understanding now, based on this discussion, is rather than increasing the taxes for the service, they want people to individually pay, so it technically does not place it under the tax bucket, but still is provided for the service. Correct? Question mark.
It's sort of correct, except for the one thing that I'll say, and again, because I'm on the finance board and looked at this data, you cannot guarantee trash will pass an override. We vote down more overrides in Groveland than we pass, especially general overrides. So you can't equate the fee on the cart to an override that may or may not pass.
I don't think
Yeah.
that's the question. I don't think there's been a decision on paying for anything.
No,
I think
there's no decision made.
It would still remain
We're just
as a
looking.
free service at this point, unless there is some reason for there to be a fee of some sort.
Correct,
So currently, it would remain in the tax base.
until
So-
otherwise, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
that it?
Becky has a question real quick.
I have a little bit more of a comment. I know I've read online a little bit about the concern with composting and wildlife. I have Meadow Pond in my backyard. Lots of wildlife, otters, coyotes. I think I saw a weasel the other day. I do compost in my yard. I use a bin that's similar to what Mike was showing. It has the little holes in it, and I use that for composting, and I've never had an issue. I know people worry about the smell as well, too. I haven't had a problem. I've had that compost barrel for about 3 years now. It's never been tipped over or disturbed by the wildlife.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so are we good on the online, do you think, at this point, too? Okay, and so, again, we really, really appreciate the good questions. Gives us more things to think about. Yeah, I wish there was an easy way we could all raise our thumbs and vote on this, but this is a complex contract. You don't put a complex contract on a ballot. You put it into committee and then refer it to the governing authority, which is the select board. That's how you deal with a complex contract. You have to. That's why this select board exists. One of our primary functions is we're responsible for the contracts that the town enters into. Yep. So thank you so much. If you want to do an exit ticket, fine. If not, thank you again for all your time, and maybe we'll do this again.
Well done, Kathleen.
Well done to all of you. Thanks.